This is the little bit different part of the agenda in that we've got some representatives of funds that actually make the investments that we're talking about in the entrepreneurial system. And my name is Harold Lavender. I work for CNM Ingenuity. I have a role there that it's kind of a eclectic role in that I work with Job Training Albuquerque, Hyperspace Challenge, Activate New Mexico, and a variety of other things. I feel ABQID was a startup accelerator, and we merged with CNM Ingenuity in 2019, and that's been a wonderful thing all the way across the board. What I wanted to do, I think I was asked to do this today because I think partly because I'm a member of the State Investment Council. I am the chairman of the investment committee. I've had the privilege of having that job for a while, or being in that position for a while, and it's one of the most rewarding things we've done. We've been able to turn the corner on the amount of money that we have invested on behalf of the state and to manage that money. So what I'd like to do is to turn to each of our panelists and have them introduce themselves at some length to kind of explain a little bit about what they do, and then we'll get into the meat of this. So without further ado, Adam.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here with you today and to join Ward and Nicole and Harold. Looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully we'll get some questions from the audience as well. I'm Adam Hammer. I'm the CEO of Roadrunner Venture Studios. We're a new kid on the block, so I'll share a little bit about what we do and how we're hoping to partner with folks in the community. So we're just right around the corner. We had our formal launch just about a month ago, but we've been around, building for the last 6 months. We are an early stage venture fund and venture studio. Venture studios are kind of a new model. TJ is certainly an expert, but for most folks, it's a new method. It's been used predominantly in the software industry, but what we're doing is taking that core concept of building companies from concept to company. So that means, everything from helping build product to recruiting the initial team to, finding the first check and providing engineering talent and marketing talent. We're doing all of those types of services and really trying to focus that around being a company creation engine. So our mission at Roadrunner is to partner with amazing scientists and entrepreneurs and innovators to build deep tech companies right here in New Mexico. I came to this from a few different experiences. So just prior to this, I was the chief operating officer of a post-quantum encryption quantum hardware company in New York City. And prior to that, I was the managing director and head of strategy for Eric Schmidt's venture fund when he left Google. So I spent some time in the venture industry doing deep tech and science investing. I've been an entrepreneur building out an early stage company, particularly in deep tech. Prior to that, I was the head of product and chief operating officer of a media company. And prior to that, I was an investment banker focused on tech and industrials and also energy. So, the thing I want to hit on is that venture studios are unique, and they're both an entrepreneurial concept, but also an investing concept. We're here in New Mexico, and we're excited to be here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ward.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ward Hendon. It's a real pleasure to be here. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Dangerous Ventures, which is a pre-seed and seed stage venture firm. We're based up in Santa Fe. I have a partner in Silicon Valley and a partner in Los Angeles. And we focus on climate tech. I often reflect on how I got here. If I had followed the footsteps that my family had set out for me, I'd be a small town country lawyer in Asheville, North Carolina right now, where I'm from. But I didn't do that. And I did practice law for a couple of years, long enough to know that I didn't really have it in me to do that for a career. And second, I was able to observe some problems in the system of big law, which led me to become an entrepreneur. And I co-founded a business in 2000 in New York City called Axiom Law. We grew that into a global, first of its kind, tech-enabled legal services firm. had a successful exit in 2018. At that time, I was in Los Angeles. I'd been in New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles with Axiom. I found teaching as a bit of a calling. I started teaching at UCLA Business School, where I still teach an impact investing class to first-year MBAs and an entrepreneurship class to second years. I also taught in prisons in California and developed a real passion for helping men and women develop the hard and soft skills of entrepreneurship, so when they would get out, they would have something to land on to start a small business or join a business. And I'll talk a little bit about my passions for teaching and how I'm going to translate that here to New Mexico shortly. But that's it for me for now.
Thanks, Ward. I'm a recovering lawyer, so I kind of understand that part of what you're talking about. Next, I'd like Nicole.
Super excited to be with everyone today. I always love looking at the audience. Okay, what about now? All right. Okay. So good afternoon. Yeah, it's Shay, yeah, Nicole, Johnny, Nisha. Ki ani nishlando sitna juna bashichin. Trabahin dashet Shay, ado nasha dana additionale. Agot ego dana asana nishlando trons illa denasha. Kreya beedil dasanil ishran ado shanan nishte. So, good afternoon. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation with my roots coming from the small community of Crystal, New Mexico, located in the Cheska Mountains. And like my panelists here, I guess I am New Mexico grown. And what's really exciting is that finding myself on the stage with these different funds is really important. It speaks to really the passion and commitment that I have of bettering Indigenous people and our well-being of our economy as well. So, I have the lovely experience of working in impact investing with Raven Indigenous Capital Partners. We're North America's first Indigenous-owned and led venture capital firm. So it's really exciting. We invest in seed Indigenous-owned and led businesses throughout Canada and the US. We're really excited about growing deeper roots here in New Mexico, and that's kind of what I'm doing here with Raven. And so we're currently on our second fund. We have $100 million in capital that we're deploying actively, again, in the US and in Canada. And really, with what we do, with the type of investments that we make, is we ask ourselves, what type of impact are we looking to make? You know, and I think impact has been kind of like the overarching theme that we've been hearing today. But prior to my journey with Raven, I had found myself actually growing up, outside of Gallup, New Mexico. So Representative Munoz, definitely have been part of, being part of the active voting system there. But also, I left the Gallup area, went to school in Los Angeles, have my MBA in finance, worked on Wall Street for a little bit. And I laugh that it's like I've lived in New York, I lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in the UK, I studied abroad at Oxford, but I had never lived in Albuquerque. So that's what kind of brought me here. But also, New Mexico is home, and I'm deeply passionate about building the economies and the communities that we need to see here in New Mexico as well. And so with kind of this roundabout experience, I decided that the next effort to kind of work towards is impact investing. So in a way, roundabout way, even though Raven's not headquartered in New Mexico, we're headquartered in Vancouver, we are actually looking to build our deeper roots here. And so that's kind of how I find myself on stage here with Ward and Adam.
Thank you, Nicole. I think that probably the best thing we can do at this point is talk a little bit about, although each of you none of you have been involved in New Mexico for a long time, you have been here long enough to kind of see the landscape and exactly what's happening in the startup world. Why don't you talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen and the potential that you see in New Mexico? I'll start with Adam.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So let me first talk about the potential, and I know you've heard, a few panelists today talk about the potential. I'll try to hit on some points that were hopefully unique and personal to me. So one, as Steve mentioned earlier, Steve's a partner of mine. He, of course, is at America's Frontier Fund, which is our institutional partner. When we took a look at what communities, what areas have all the necessary building blocks, but are just missing a catalyst. New Mexico was the prime candidate for that. Not only are there amazing institutions and phenomenal government partners, there's also a growing entrepreneurial community here. There's a lot of hunger in the science and R&D community to build companies. I think about, an early experience I had here. We created a research showcase, a poster board competition. Some of you may have been there, and it was early June and very early days for Roadrunner. But I can recall going to one of the national labs a month prior and doing a tour through some of the interesting technologies that were being built, and seeing on a whiteboard next to a water cooler the poster board, little kind of handout for our event. And there was a scientist, didn't know where I was from. It said, "Oh, I'm going to this event. I can't wait." And I thought to myself, this is amazing. I mean, I haven't been, I hadn't been, marketing at that particular lab. I didn't know the scientist, but there was this just genuine hunger to build something, to build a company here and to keep it here. And so there are all the analytical reasons why folks should build in New Mexico and why we think there's tremendous potential here. But there's also some really amazing personal stories, and there's some amazing, what I hear, this sort of growing hunger to build something. So I'd say those are two really big things. I think the third is, I'm sort of a romantic about history, and I think that there's something special here in the tapestry of innovation that's happened in this state. And you're heading into a moment globally where the United States is focused on, again, for better or for worse, we're in a global tech competition. There is a greater focus on the industrial base. There is a focus on making sure that we keep critical technologies at home. And I think as a deep tech investor, we're on the precipice of building technologies that are going to shape the human experience. I mean, I fundamentally believe that this cycle looks a lot different than some of the ones prior. The things that are being built today are going to shape the way the world lives. They're going to shape how we interact with nature, how we interact with each other in extraordinary, extraordinary ways. And so there is this urgency to get it right. And for this country, there's an urgency to be leading in it. Because if we're not leading in it, somebody else is leading in it. And yes, that means that likely, that other place would be able to generate the economic returns from leading in it. But also it's about values. That if we're leading, we're able to instill values into things like AI and synthetic biology and others that are enshrined in our community and in our people and our constitution. And when I think about why the stakes are so high right now for deep tech, it feels like making sure that New Mexico is leading on this feels very appropriate considering the history that this state has had. I think there's an amazing potential to reignite what this state has led in for so many years and to rebuild that in deep tech when the stakes have never been higher for the country. So I'm excited to be here for all the analytical reasons. I'm also excited to be here for a variety of just personal and patriotic reasons.
Ward, your thoughts?
Going to try it again. There we go. I moved here 3 years ago from Southern California, moved my family here. So really made a commitment to the state of New Mexico. And in all honesty, I moved here with no vision at all for what I would do here professionally. In fact, I had assumed I would be on a plane to New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles. And I have been absolutely blown away and delighted by what I found here. And it's been through people like Stu Rose, who opened his door, has let me come in and just learn from him, meeting Lisa, TJ. There is a real spirit here of, I'd call it pay it forward, that I have not experienced anywhere else. And I've built my career in big cities where it just didn't have that. And that's something that I wanted to sort of spend a little time on, is how do we continue to build on that spirit of collaboration, paying it forward, mentoring, all these sort of soft things that really matter. And because we are in this sort of emergent state as a startup ecosystem, and I can say that because I'm new to town, and I realize there's been years of hard work that have gotten us to this point. But I feel like that those values are really important, and those were the first things that I witnessed when I got here, which made me really redirect our firm to really anchor here and literally invest here. And fortunately, we were able to partner with the SIC. Couldn't be more excited about that, to give us even more reason to focus here and be here. So I think the potential to me is this sort of the values that we're encoding into the system here, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, that I think just make it a great place to build a career. And I hope that'll translate to entrepreneurs who want to come here and be part of what I feel like is an extraordinarily collaborative ecosystem.
Thank you. Nicole.
I agree. I think the entrepreneurial spirit in New Mexico is incredible. You can go to the rail yards Sundays and find new things. You can go to the local flea markets near reservation boundaries and find commerce there. You know, and you think about all the different unique things that are made here in New Mexico, and it's really that entrepreneurial spirit. So when building out what we are doing at Raven, immediately I was like, New Mexico has to be there. Not only do we have such a diverse and unique environment for our native entrepreneurs, but there's so much support in bringing the businesses to life of the different incubation programs that we see here in the state. And last year I had spent, the entire year traveling around the US talking about investing in native owned businesses. And quite frankly, no one really knew about that. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, in New Mexico, we have this program. In New Mexico, we see native entrepreneurs like this and in these different manners, and giving these examples. And really with that, it comes and it highlights that what we have here in New Mexico, the culture that's woven into the way we operate, the way we deal with one another, the way we pay it forward, the way we build relationship and community with one another, it's in our community of who we are. We have so many great innovators and who are thinking of just what can solve an issue that we see at hand, and that's, I think a lot of times our entrepreneurs are doing that. They're building things because they see something isn't quite working right, or they see something that, that can be improved upon. So they're building upon that. And I think those are the overarching themes of what brings, like myself and Ward and Adam, of why we're so passionate about being here and really supporting the entrepreneurs and stepping in that pathway. But see, a few years ago, I don't think, a lot of us had really thought about what venture capital is. No one really had thought about it. I know in Indigenous community, this is still a new concept coming up. We're still talking about it. We're understanding of what does it mean. We're figuring out of how this works in our business practices. But I think, as we continue and foster the relationships and nurture that spirit, that tapestry in between all of us here, I think that's when we see a lot of the synergies coming together and bringing forward a lot of the hopes that we have for our community here.
Thank you very much. I think that gives us a pretty good insight of where these particular attitudes and ideas. I want to ask each of you, maybe I can bring in a little piece here. The State Investment Council has made some significant changes since I started on the council several years ago. And I think that has been a critical factor in the development of entrepreneurship in New Mexico. The Roadrunner was our first big one. The Roadrunner was the first time that the State Investment Council invested that amount of money in a venture situation that we think has really great potential. Dangerous, Ward's fund is exactly the same. We're talking about a fund that has complete venture potential. Raven isn't there yet, but I understand that you're going to be. So that's a terrific statement about how far we've come in the world of venture. Adam, talk a little bit about the process that you went through to get into the SIC, and then how that has impacted where you're going. Obviously, that's why you're here. And I'd like to give me your thoughts about that.
I'd be happy to. I should state ahead of time that, I'll talk from my experience. Obviously, we're partnered with America's Frontier Fund. They were the entity that went to SIC. We were created, co-founded with America's Frontier Fund. So there's some nuance to this that I just want everybody to know. Let me say a few remarks. One, I think the work that the State Investment Council is doing is amazing. It is a privilege that the state has those funds, and I think using it in ways to catalyze new companies, new products here in the state is incredibly important. It's part of why we are here. And so one, I think the mission is important. I think it's smart. I think a lot of the comments we've heard today about, look, there's a lot of the building blocks. One of the things that we really need here is capital. And Roadrunner is committed to that. So are Nicole and Ward's funds. What was instructive to us, I think, in working with Harold and the SIC team is that we had to make sure that we were building something that wasn't just redundant in the community. So what I did upon starting Roadrunner was to try to do 1,000 coffee chats here and really understand what's going well, what's missing. It's not helpful for companies or funds that come into the state to just assume that New Mexico needs something or to create something that might actually already be working just fine in the community. So what we tried to do, and I think what we're still trying to do, is think through what are the things that are working well and what are the areas that we can bring something unique that's actually accretive. And look, our fundamental expertise is creating companies. I don't know, it's not just fully in climate tech, it's not an impact. Those are slightly different expertise. Ours is really around deep tech. Deep tech defined as technologies that have long R&D cycles, technologies that generally are hard tech, meaning they have a hardware focus, not always, and are usually born in the lab. So it's not often a consumer-based business. It's usually something that is deeply technical, has a scientific insight. That is our capability. And so what we try to do is build Roadrunner in the image of what this community needs. So for instance, one, we're providing capital. We're not just unlike an incubator or like a accelerator. What we're trying to do is not only provide capital, but also know-how, and to bring folks from outside of New Mexico here. To a lot of the earlier panelists, like let's also try to bring the best and brightest here as well to New Mexico, move them here, new entrepreneurs, new executives, new what have you, to build companies in partnership with people here in the community. The other thing we're doing is trying to build facility space. It's an ongoing process, but I think, I was thinking about Stu, your comments and Steve's comments this morning. There's still some gaps in what facility spaces are needed for deep tech companies to survive and to scale here in New Mexico. We're thinking about how we can build that into our space and to do additional space. And more than anything, I think, again, it's harnessing what we think is so strong already here in New Mexico and providing it the scale capital, taking the pay it forward culture, taking all the amazing aspects of the entrepreneurial community and supercharging it so that you can build companies that stay here and thrive here. And really, we tried to build Roadrunner around that image, which I think was largely inspired by the great work of the SIC.
Ward, if you could talk a little bit about, you're brand new, SIC relationship. Just at the last November, I believe we approved the investment in Dangerous. Would you talk a little bit about that part of the process that you went through, but also talk a little bit about how you perceive your role within the SIC's mandate?
So it was a 2-year conversation that I embarked upon with the SIC, with Chris Cassidy and Bruce Brown specifically. And I have to say, it was a very rigorous and ultimately productive conversation for, I think, both parties. We're the first climate tech focused fund that's based here. And we're all taking a risk. That's what this is risk capital. And I think that it's great that the state and the SIC and Harold's group are beginning to have sort of seen it that way. and are willing to experiment with building the ecosystem from the ground up like this. So it was a 2-year process. We spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in Chris and Bruce's office just shaping what could work for both of us. And I think we ended up in a great place. I wake up every morning thinking about the state of New Mexico and the people of New Mexico and the responsibility on my shoulders to help build this with partners like Nicole and Adam, and there are a lot more. And it seems like it continues to grow. Another role that I sort of see myself playing is being an ambassador to New Mexico, which is a little weird because I'm not from here. I don't have 8 generations of family here, but I was married here 18 years ago. I kind of left that part out. My wife is here and my wife's family is here. So I sort of got to know New Mexico through the back door a bit over the years and just developed a deep love for it, and really want to see it succeed in this area. And I think we've got the elements here. And one part, I'll sort of pause on this and pass it over to Nicole, but one part I want to talk more about is what I see as the big gap in the market around entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs that we can dig a little deeper into. But that was sort of a bit about my process with the SIC. And I'll say one more thing, that I hope that we are able to perform to the level of expectations, because I think the SIC can be a partner for us for what we hope will be a series of funds in a 25, 30-year sort of run here.
Nicole, I hope this doesn't scare you away from the process you're going to have to go through to get there, but why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely not. No fear whatsoever. Because actually, we're going through the process right now. We're going through the due diligence. We're working out, answering all the questions. And really, the commitment of the SIC to working with Raven and doing the investment there, I think speaks a lot in terms of showing a strong allyship in supporting Native entrepreneurs here in New Mexico. And I think it's a really impactful thing to do, because most oftentimes our Indigenous communities were a little bit elusive. We're a little bit, we tend to kind of be on the end of trailing certain trends and new things that are coming to market. But really having the SIC support in supporting Raven, I think really shows a strong allyship to our Native communities here in New Mexico and supporting the Native entrepreneurs here in New Mexico as well. And I think also it just really stands in the fact that, the SIC is welcoming to walk with Raven, with these new funds, like with Ward and Adam, and walking with us in these areas that are a little bit unknown. But they're willing to do it, and I think they're willing, and that says a lot. And I think that support means a lot as we really start understanding and as we dig deeper into, the different areas that we invest in. Because quite frankly, at times with Raven, and what we find out is, we work at the pace of trust. We want to trust and have a good working relationship. We want to be a good relative in this impact investing space with Native entrepreneurs. And so really the way we want to operate and the way we want to function is doing so with good intentions. And I think that's what we're seeing as we're going through this due diligence process as well too.
Thanks. I think that it might just take a moment. I'm not sure how everyone in the room understands the State Investment Council process for these kinds of investments. Might take a moment just to explain that. We are allowed to invest in New Mexico private equity and New Mexico programs purely as a result of the statute. We have a statutory maximum that we can use as a percentage of the severance tax fund. We can use up to 11% by policy. The council has determined that we can use up to 9% of that to invest in New Mexico programs. Were it not for the statutes, we would have a very difficult time, because the statutes basically allow us to make investments at what are called differential rates. And that gives us the freedom to make these kinds of investments. I think that this has, again, evolved significantly over the last few years, and I think has made it really possible for these kinds of investments to be made. The council is, I think we're going to see more of this. You're seeing 2 of them today, and you're going to see more over the course of time. And I think the goal of the council now is to put all of that money to work as rapidly as we can in the hands of funds. We invest only in funds. We don't make direct investments. And I think that having the kinds of funds that we've had approach us has been really important. I'd like to move to a little bit different direction now, if I could. Let's start with Nicole this time. What kinds of advice, you're a fund, you deal with entrepreneurs. What kinds of advice can you give us that you would like to have passed on to the potential entrepreneurs coming to you seeking an investment?
So with Raven, what's really unique about Raven and our work that we do across Canada and the US, and what we're looking to do here in New Mexico, is that along with our commercial due diligence process, we really look equally at impact, because we're impact investors. Our partners, and we ask ourselves constantly, the question is, what type of medicine does this Native entrepreneur bring to our community, to our world, to our people? Because really the catalyst and the investment thesis that we hold at Raven is like, we're showing investors, we're showing that you can have, a commercially viable business and you can have returns at the same time. And you can do this in the Indigenous space, because really, when you look at the different funds around in the VC space and the private equity space, there's really not anything dedicated towards, Indigenous people. And for the longest time, we've been left out of this space. We've been left out of this market. And there really hasn't been anyone stepping in to this and helping bring this access to capital, not on this larger scale size, And so with Raven, we challenge ourselves, we challenge our team members, we challenge our investors, we challenge market participants to think about impact. We think about impact not just in our local community, but globally as well too. We really ask ourselves that, and I think that's the biggest component. So when we go through our process at Raven, we'll ask about the impact. We'll want to know the narrative. We'll want to understand what is it that you're building, because when we make our investment, we're really making the investment in the leadership. We're really wanting and investing into the narrative and to the leadership of our Indigenous founder and their team. That's what we believe in, and that's how we kind of move forward. The rest of the process of a Raven investment, follows similarly of Ward and Adams, but what might be a little bit different there is our weight on impact.
Ward, what do you think about what advice would you give entrepreneurs coming to you?
Yeah, this is such a hard question because everybody has advice for entrepreneurs. And I think this is really the golden age of entrepreneurship. When I started my business in 2000, we probably spent $5 million on servers and hardware. And we'd be fired for that today. I don't think we could actually find $5 million worth of server and hardware. But I think that some things that come up repeatedly in my world when I'm thinking about successful entrepreneurs and the advice that I give them, it's really, you've ultimately got to be a salesperson, and that's a complicated job description for a lot of people, particularly people coming out of science backgrounds who might not have experience selling. And thinking about what Vince was talking about earlier with crafting narratives, I feel like I spend a lot of time helping entrepreneurs craft narratives for a given audience. And the investing landscape right now is very different than it was a year ago, 2 years ago. So helping entrepreneurs craft a narrative for fundraising, for hiring, these are all sales contexts. So I think being open to that and open to learning how to be more of a salesperson, which is not a bad word. right? I think there's oftentimes some stereotypes that kind of get in the way. But I think being comfortable in a selling context is very important. The other thing I'd say is thinking about the commercialization of whatever product or service that you're going to market with, and just really getting out of the office. And when I teach this in a business school context, my students are very comfortable sitting in front of their computer and researching market trends and building data sets, when ultimately they've really got to get out of the classroom or out of the office and go speak to customers and get really clear on what the needs are of those customers and go through a process of customer discovery and ultimately getting to this sort of nebulous, elusive thing called product market fit that every entrepreneur ultimately needs to get to. And that's a very hard thing to do. So speaking with customers and getting really wired into their sort of psychology is critical. And the last thing I'll say is be comfortable asking for favors. Being an entrepreneur it can be a very lonely place. And one person can't do it all themselves. So building an advisory board, whether it's for the business or for themselves, asking for favors. When I was building my business, it was just embarrassing how often I was out there asking for favors, asking for time, asking for introductions. But that's something that's just got to be part of the mix for, I think, a successful entrepreneur.
Thanks a lot. Adam, your perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to tailor my comments towards building a deep tech. So there might be some nuances here that are not generally applicable, but I think useful to get a different perspective. Ward said something that's really important, which is the cardinal rule of sales and getting product market fit is get out of the building. This is the 101. Get out of the building, talk to people. When you're thinking about building a company, particularly in deep tech, it's get out of the present. And what I mean by that is have some version of the future that you believe in. So get yourself to time travel into the world of, call it 2030, 2028, and say, here is my version of the hydrogen economy. Here is my version of, cislunar space infrastructure. Here is my version of, quantum random number generators. But have a point of view as an entrepreneur about where you think the future is headed and why. That's, extremely important and probably rule number one. Advice number two is, look, every startup is built and, is dead until proven alive. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to force a choice, not a comparison with each of the other products in the ecosystem. An incumbent will always win if you are just an incrementally better product. An incumbent will always win if you are just a comparison. So if you are trying to build a disruptive business, you have to say, look, everybody is solving XYZ problem this way. I'm not suggesting I have a way that's 15% better. I'm actually suggesting an entirely different future about how we solve XYZ. So have a point of view, get out of the present, force a choice in a different future, not just a comparison. Three, and I think it's instructive, particularly for scientists, and it's technology is not product. Technology is not product. It's a really, really important distinction. Product, in my mind, is taking the beauty of technology, that technical insight you have, and marrying it to a customer use case. Products solve a problem for somebody. And the ultimate way of knowing whether you have a product in product market fit is that somebody's willing to pay for it. You're solving somebody, they can't wait to snatch it out of your hands. That's building a product. It's taking an amazing technical insight that you have to solve some issue and marrying it to a customer use case. So one, get out of the present. Two, force a choice. Three, technology is not product. And then four, there's a couple ways I could go with this, but not every company needs venture funding. I'm saying that from somebody who would love to fund all the companies, but there are plenty of amazing businesses that can be built, even in deep tech, where you might not need venture capital. There are other sources of funding, but moreover, the most powerful statement of any builder is to have your own skin in the game. And so, scarcity is actually really good for early companies. The worst thing that you can give to an early company is to be under constrained. And so, my fourth piece of advice is actually think about when to raise capital, from whom, how much. Don't just raise because it's fashionable, raise because you need it. And if you really find the right venture partner like these folks, it's not just the capital. The capital should be the least valuable thing they provide. It's everything else that Ward and Nicole and myself will lean in to help you build that future that you aspire.
That means when you need the intros, the funds, if you do your due diligence as entrepreneurs on your funds, when you need those intros, we'll be saying, yeah, who do you need to talk to? We can bridge that. We're talking about the support of that, And I will say too, with the Indigenous entrepreneurs that we often interact with, it's the commercialization. That's the component that we're always tweaking with and understanding. So it's not just knowing your impact, being able to sell a story, understanding your narrative, but it's also, sometimes we reframe it back to entrepreneurs. Is venture capital really something you want for your business right now? Do you really want to give up ownership of your business right now? Because we talk about being patient capital providers, we're looking at a longer term, relationship, a longer term commitment, a longer term working partnership with you guys, as entrepreneurs. And so, sometimes we ask that. We ask that of the conversations that we have is do you think this is really, applicable right now in the business cycle that you're in, of really understanding that. So I just wanted to jump in and kind of offer that little bit of insight as well too.
I've got one more thing to add. I wanted to build on something Adam said around having a point of view. There is a luxury that entrepreneurs have that business people inside of established companies don't have. And that is the ability and the necessity oftentimes to pivot. In between that point of inception to product market fit, there are constraints, obviously. There's cash burn and there's a time constraint. But it's a real luxury to be able to get out and talk to customers and ultimately pivot a value proposition. And so, although those might be hard conversations at the board level, hey, we're changing our business, get ready. That's often the smartest thing to do. So that's just a real important thing to bake into the fabric of companies that we are investing in and working with.
Ward, what I'd like you to do is we've had a lot of conversation today in the other groups so far about silos. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the idea, the concept of how do we overcome silos in the state and in your own business, in your own model, and work on collaboration. And then I'll ask the other two of you each to respond in that same way, if you would.
Yeah, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. Being a new person here, not having any relationships with the national labs or the economic development department or state government. So I often, in the first couple of years I was here, felt a little bit lost about who to go talk to. And I had to sort of build my own team, my own sort of picture of what the ecosystem looks like here. And what I observed was that there are a lot of amazing conversations going on in these sort of different silos. For example, I would love to know what's on the agenda for the budget at the state legislature this year. And maybe I haven't done the work to go online and read it and go talk to my representative, but that feels like another one of those silos that I would love to have more sort of connection to and understanding about what kind of bills are on the table that could impact the entrepreneurial economy. And then I think in my own sort of firm and managing our portfolio and our diligence process, it's a constant battle in a positive way of making connections with experts with other general partners, with other entrepreneurs. It's just an information game that we play and trying to create as much flow and we're never going to have perfect information. It's not that kind of a world. And that's part of our advantage in some ways. But I think ultimately, for me at least, it's just been about building trusted relationships and nurturing those and being a good partner that I think are sort of table stakes for breaking down those silos and making this successful.
Nicole?
I agree. I agree with what Ward is saying too. And I would say too that part of breaking down the silos is, I had really thought about it too, is like, being out of your comfort zone, really stepping out of that comfort zone and asking for conversations and asking to understand a little bit better of like what someone else does from a different industry. At Raven, we're sector agnostic, so we invest in all different types of sectors, but really, and that requires us to kind of move in between spaces quite frequently of like looking at everything from consumer products to, fintech to health tech and all the crazy sectors in between. But really that means like, kind of understanding and taking the time to say like, hey, like, I don't really know what this means, but, can we talk a little bit more, and being welcoming to being new to a space. And I know from our Indigenous perspective, sometimes it's a little daunting to kind of like, okay, go to a new space and you don't really know what's going to happen. And you're kind of like, okay, who do I know? Where do I go? What do I do? Because often I've been in that space as well. But I think that really does take the courage to do that and to be willing to just kind of step outside of the norm, step outside of the comfort zone, and really just have an open conversation and be led by curiosity. I think that's one of the biggest traits that I see, that I love to see in entrepreneurs, is being led by curiosity and being led to by that fuel and by that. But why? But can I learn a little bit more? And I think that's some good leads that I think could help break down sometimes the silos that we see, even between our funds, even between different peoples and sectors that we're in. Lead by curiosity.
Adam?
Two things I'd add. One, heard a few panelists today talk about tech translation. I guess I'd say I'd love it if we could build more bilingual speakers. And what I mean by that is there's a whole lot of translation that needs to happen between silos. Not only do you need people to translate tech, you need people to translate entrepreneurial. You need people to translate how to recruit a team. You need people to translate how to do business operations, which is incredibly hard, how to work with government partners. So translators are really important. What can we do as a community? What can we do as folks in the room to invest in and build more translators for this community across all the different silos? Two, I'd say, instilling a vision that we're building a bigger pie, that, when you bring a friend, when you bring somebody into a deal, that's better for all parties. And how do you sort of instill this when we win together, that's even more powerful than winning individually, culture. On a practical level, it means showing up to events, bring a friend. On an investing level, it means bring a deal. I think Ward and I have a few that we're kicking around. Would love to find a way to do that. But what ways can we build a rising tide here and let's succeed as a community. Let's build a damn unicorn here, and let's have everybody in the room benefit from it. And it's not going to just be, Harold's doing or my doing or Nicole. It's going to take all of us. And so I'm in for it. I hope you guys are. And that's how I want to break down the silos.
Ward, if you'll talk a little bit, I know Nicole has already been there several times today. Talk a little bit about impact investing and how you perceive that fitting within what you plan to do.
So I think about impact investing as investing for a risk-adjusted financial return, meaning if we're early, we expect a return to compensate for that level of risk. So risk-adjusted financial return and some positive societal or environmental benefit. And that's how we invest our LP's money. So we work with our portfolio companies to land on a metric We're pre-seed and seed, so sometimes that's hard, but an impact metric that we can begin to track and report on, and we build from there over time. It could be, carbon removal from the atmosphere. It could be jobs. We look at the UN SDGs as a guide for things that we can track as sort of jumping off point. But for us, we have committed to our investors a certain financial return. So we have a market rate financial return for venture. But the different thing we're bringing is this notion of impact, which I will readily admit, and I teach this, it's really hard sometimes to measure impact. And there's a alphabet soup of different frameworks and formula for how to measure impact. And I think we're sort of in the nascent stages of the impact investing world, and that will evolve and we'll refine that over time. But, this is my personal belief. I'm hopeful that this kind of view on impact investing will become the mainstream. I don't see it as a, woke capitalism at all. I view it as the evolution of capitalism where business can bring financial rewards and these other benefits.
Adam, what do you think? How's it going to fit? How's impact investing going to fit?
Well, when I think about it from the Roadrunner perspective, we're animated by the belief that, future progress for humanity doesn't just march forward on its own. We have this, we're sort of, oftentimes we feel that way because new technologies are built and life goes on and there's new pharmaceutical drugs. But there are people that are grinding away, innovating, daring, taking risks, running into walls like that bird just did. I mean, it takes blood, sweat, and tears to move humanity forward. And we forget it sometimes because it feels inevitable, but it's not. I mean, even students of history will know there was this thing called the Dark Ages, and what predated it was actually more sophisticated than what the Dark Ages was. So there is the prospect that we can actually go into recessions of innovation. And I guess when I think about the companies we want to build and our purpose, I want Roadrunner to build disruptive companies that moves humanity forward and makes the world a better place. There are so many ways that people can make the world a better place. Building a company is one very small way to do it. It's the way that we do it. It's not a monopoly on how to make the world better. But our method is, let's find the ideas that are daring and bold and are 10x and might just be crazy enough to change the world. Let's try to support them and catalyze them and give them capital and build a product around them. And let's make sure that those technologies actually make the world better too, that they're good for humans, for humanity. That's what we're excited by and what we're focused on.
I think that's terrific. I'm going to put each of you on the spot now. I would like each of you to think for a minute. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and then one of you has to jump in. I want you to come up and ask, what question haven't we asked that you would like to address or that you would like to put before the group? And this is always kind of a fun one for me because it's tough in some ways. But you know what? What question should we or could we have asked that you think this group would like to hear about?
I've got one.
Okay.
Do I get the prize? I think each of us should be asking ourselves, what are we doing to pay it forward? That might not be tied to our bottom line, but is tied to strengthening the ecosystem, the community, helping entrepreneurs, helping other people. I think about this a lot, and I spend a lot of my time mentoring, coaching, just trying to help out. And I think that's something that each of us should be doing in our own way, however it fits into our busy calendar, but finding a way to be of service. My job is absolutely a service job. I serve my investors and I serve entrepreneurs. So having that sort of service ethic, I think, has certainly helped me, and it's just made my life more interesting because I get to meet more people. and be of service to them. So I would just ask that question, how are each one of us sort of paying it forward and strengthening the community?
Nicole.
Ward got to a little bit quicker than but I was thinking things about how do we strengthen the community around us, and how do we not exclude others that might be on the perimeters of our community, you know, kind of going back to breaking down the silos, kind of going upon the thing of like being a good relative in this space and being a good relative to everyone around us, you know. And I think that's a similar highlight of like paying it forward. How can we help others? How can we bridge the conversations? How can we learn together, you know? And I think of I see wonderful Gina right there, and I think about the opportunity I had at your office about learning what other Native CEOs are dealing with, the issues and the hurdles there. I mean, having that opportunity to create community, to create open conversations, I think is like really, it could be really helpful. It's really impactful, and really bringing that community together, I think, is something that we can do.
Adam.
I guess for me, I'd ask myself, the panelists, and also the folks in this room, you know, what is the industry of the future that this state should lead on? I think that, look, I'm in the business of taking risks. I'm also in the business of focus or die. So, like, what is it when we think about all the innovations that we know are coming down the line? What is it that New Mexico is going to be the unmistaken leader in? Is it going to be quantum to a lot of the work that folks in this room are doing? Is it going to be advanced manufacturing? Is it going to be hydrogen energy? My sense is that we're searching for a vision a little bit, and we haven't figured out what it is. And what I would love to do is figure out what's that dominating, animating theme that everybody in this community can get around and say, we are going to be the leader in X. We're going to be the leader in this industry, and we're going to be damn sure that the winning company that builds the best product, the best company in this space, the best workforce development, the best training programs, that's going to be here, nowhere else. And when they say, oh, I want to go build if it's hydrogen, I want to build a hydrogen company, every entrepreneur will know, I got to go to New Mexico to do it. But I don't know what it is. I have a theory of a few areas it could be, but I think the collective brain power of the folks in here are much smarter than me to think about it would be great.
I think that's a really good, that's a good thing to think about. That is, what can we do here in New Mexico? What do we do better than anybody else? And how can we make that be the key to what we do? I think it's not a pretty good idea now, if it's okay with the panel, is to open this up for questions from the crowd. And if there are any, I know we've got some microphones out here coming and things like that. I'll also be happy to address any questions about the SIC part, although I am just window dressing, but these three are the experts, and but I'm here.
A number of us are familiar with and interfaces with a number of entrepreneurs, recognizing the limitations on yourself regarding investment and the limited opportunities that VCs support within the entire entrepreneurial community. Could you share with us your criterion or what kinds of entrepreneurs you would like to have sent to you, perhaps in terms of minimum investment, return on investment, length of time that you would tolerate before getting rid of them, anything that you would have in the way of a criterion so that we don't send you incorrect entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Vic. Did everyone hear that question? Okay, I won't have to repeat it. Okay. Who wants to start? Nicole.
I think it's because I had answered this question yesterday. So with Raven, of course, our specialty is we love to back our Indigenous founders. So we're on our second fund, like I said. So we, cut checks anywhere between 200, 250K to about 3 million. So our check sizes are large, or they can vary. There's a variable scale in there. We definitely look at, again, we're sector agnostic, but there are some areas that we do like to look at a little bit closer. A lot of the tech-backed things as well. That's kind of like what we do with our sweet spot at Raven here. Food, sovereignty, next-gen consumers, regenerative ag. There's a few others that we kind of look at, but with Raven, there definitely is definitely is like the long-term patient capital. So we look anywhere from investments between 5 to 7 years. We'll definitely co-lead. I know we're always trying to look at things of where we can work with Ward as well too, when we look at some of the clean energy type of entrepreneurs that we see in our way. But definitely 250K to 3 million is our check sizes, 5 to 7 years. We're sector agnostic, so we'll look at a lot of different things.
I'll go next. So criteria, our criteria is flexible, but I'd say a few helpful points. So one, we're an early stage investor, and because we're a venture studio, it's a unique model. We generally look for ideas and companies and founders that do not have venture backing already. So they can have government funding, they can even have family and friends, angel investors, but generally, if they've had significant venture capital, it's probably a little bit too late stage for us at Roadrunner. Our partners at America's Frontier Fund, of course, are investing in Series A and Series B and could be a better fit for them. So that's on just maturity level. On focus, going back to my advice for entrepreneurs, we're looking for companies that have a technical insight. So there has to be some inflection, technology inflection that you are harnessing, and some technical insight that you have made, either in the lab or elsewhere in your garage. But you're solving a problem using technology in some innovative way. And generally, the way we think about that is it has to be defensible some way. And so sometimes that's a patent. Sometimes it's, again, a technical innovation or insight that is very challenging to replicate. You are the only person that's figured out how to do it. That's important to us. We're focused on deep tech. We have 4 or 5 sectors that we're building in. That's quantum, it's advanced manufacturing, it's robotics, it's climate tech, it's space tech. So, generally that's not consumer facing. Generally there's kind of an R&D timeline to it. And generally, but not always, there's a hardware component to it. I'd say all those things, and then, finally to my point of impact, we really are looking for the 10x business. So again, there's plenty of capital out there for all types of ideas. We run across ideas all the time that can make perfectly reasonable returns, but they're just not a fit for us because my mandate is to go find the rocket ship and to build it. And so it has to really have a takeoff potential, either measured by its potential impact or by the type of technology that it's harnessing.
So our thesis is backing companies building a more resilient future for people and planet. And that tends to be in 4 categories of climate-related technologies: mobility, energy, food systems, and the 4th category is what we call climate stressors. So looking at drought, flood, wildfire, and finding tech or business model solutions to help mitigate the worst effects of those. We will go really early. We'll write a $50,000 check. And that tends to be more milestone-based, early seed stuff, where we want to have a relationship over a period of time before the first real institutional round. So we're writing, could be several $50,000 checks tied to milestones. And that's the riskiest, earliest time that we would do that. The other thing I'd say is we want entrepreneurs who are venture ready, who understands, obviously their business needs to be the type that can absorb venture capital and generate the kind of returns that we commit to our LPs. But I think the entrepreneur also just needs to understand the responsibility that they're taking on of bringing in outside institutional capital with a board of directors and all the stuff that goes along with that. So, and this is one of my kind of pet issues that I alluded to earlier in this ecosystem. It is, we need to develop our own and bring in from the outside more venture-ready entrepreneurs. And I think that's sort of the key link between all of the wonderful IP that's being created in the labs and the capital that's here. that we need to really hone in on developing those and recruiting those venture-ready entrepreneurs. And that's a long, I think, multi-year, all hands on deck process. And I've got a lot of thinking about that. I'd love to share if anybody's interested, but it feels like that's going to be a lot of certainly my firm and my personal work over the next few years.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the audience? Back over here, Jeff. You need to, yeah, she'll bring in a.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Harold. Definitely a little more than window dressing. So my question was, as far as venture capital and the operations that you guys are able to, or not operations, but the assistance that you guys are able to provide these entrepreneurs, how are you trying to avoid insular activities yourselves in order to immerse yourself in the New Mexico ecosystem as well as other people that are within your industry?
I'll take a crack at that. So we have two strategies. As I mentioned, I have partners in Silicon Valley, one partner in Silicon Valley, one partner in LA. I'm here. We have a national strategy and a New Mexico strategy. They share the same thesis. And so one thing that I think we're able to bring to the table, which is a bit different, and Indigenous Capital Partners does, and eventually Adam's team will as they expand, is being able to have a hand in these other pockets of innovation geographically, to help us not be insular, I think was the word you used, Jeff, and keep, I'll tell you where it really helps the most is recruiting and bringing in follow-on capital, is just having relationships in different parts of the country. Does that answer your question about avoiding being insular? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to add anything?
Similarly to like what Ward was mentioning, so we're typically pre-seed, seed, more so seed investors, and so when we're looking for the next round for our entrepreneurs, we definitely really like to work with other funds who have the same ideals in supporting our native entrepreneurs. So sometimes we're Canada and US as well too. So we definitely have different pockets of community and support in Canada and in the US. We definitely have partners on the East Coast, Oklahoma, here in New Mexico. So we really do try to pull together all of that when we're looking to do additional rounds for our funds as well too. So again, it's like being a good relative in this space, being a good advocate for our founders, sharing the stories and the impact of like what they do and having a good narrative there.
David?
Thank you. Is this on? I'd like to thank the panel. My question is, my observation has been that the skill sets that are required to incubate a company and launch it may be very different from the kinds of skill sets that are required when you get to later stages. The idea of the inspiration and the vision may not be the same kinds of skill sets that a person who has to manage a P&L and develop systems. And I'm just wondering if those things are realities that you see in the companies that you've developed. And number two would be, how do you manage those kinds of transitions and coach the entrepreneurs through that?
Yeah, you're 100% correct from my point of view. It is very rare to find a founder that can scale alongside the business. It happens rarely, and most often the folks that come to build a business and found a business, if they are the CEO in this instance, it is rare that they have the ability to scale up into the different phases of the company. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for the founder. It just means that you have to think about how to put the right team around the founder. You have to think about how the CEO is building the skills to flex and adapt, because a you know, an early stage company is really focused on finding product market fit. It's a very different leadership and mandate to then go to scale. Some folks can do it. Not everybody can. The hard part is having the conversation with people about it. You know, I don't have a playbook for it. What I will say is I try to build a personal relationship with each of the folks that we build with. And that's first. And they've got to trust me and I've got to trust them. And my hope is that I can show to them that I have their best interests at heart and that I'm going to be their biggest advocate in helping them think through, again, what we can be doing to build around them, but also figuring out, you know, if they're a third baseman, put them in third base. If they're a center fielder, put them in center field. Too often, businesses are asking people to play positions that they're not. It's the role of the board member, sometimes of the investor, of the coach to say, look, you're a really great first baseman. Right now, you're being asked to do something else. Sorry for the sports analogy, but I use it often, and I think people react well. You want to build companies, and you want to put people in roles where they succeed, not where it's just incredibly hard for them.
I appreciate that. I'd like to, we're going to close this up. The bell's going to ring here pretty quick. I think that I'm more optimistic right now than I've been for a long, long time. There are incredible opportunities in New Mexico right now for venture capital. The New Mexico Venture Capital Fund, which I believe Javier may have mentioned that when he was speaking. You've got the SSBCI money, and both of those programs are now being run by the New Mexico Finance Authority. The SIC has quite a bit of dry powder that we're going to be working on. I anticipate a minimum of 1 or 2 investments, such as these 2, every month from not on infinitum, but for quite some time. And I think that I'm really optimistic about the potential for the future. So I think that I hope that you can either are or can become. I'd like to thank Nicole. I'd like to thank Ward, and I'd like to thank Adam for participating with us today.